This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use that code CLNS. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. You can also take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account. Use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. And finally, Notturno Home Services. They are Greg's home comfort company. If you're looking for a team that puts your comfort first, visit notturnohome.com/Bedard for 10% off your next service. You could save up to $1,000. Greg, the first thing I want to ask you about is Dante Scarnecchia. And I want to ask you about Dante because you were the first person to write about the possibility of him floating around. Now, you mentioned multiple times on the podcast earlier this week, or maybe it was even late last week, I can't remember, that Scarnecchia, two people you spoke with kind of downplayed it. One person said that he could, play a role as an advisor, consultant, but he would be there as like a sounding board for McDaniels and maybe Doug Marrone. So that was the first thing that came out. Bill O'Brien on his podcast came out and said that Scarnecchia had already been at the facility, had already spoken to Marrone a couple of times, and pretty much that Scar was going to be an advisor. Mm-hmm. And Scarnecchia goes on the Greg Hill show this morning on WEEI and says, nope, I'm not working with the program. I have not been advising. Pretty much I've got nothing for you. Is this Scar being humble? Is it he doesn't want to step on toes? Is it semantics? Are they just playing semantics games here where he doesn't have the official title as an advisor and maybe not getting paid, but he's kind of floating around? What the hell is going on with Dante Scarnecchia?
I wasn't aware that he went on the radio today and said that. Let me see. How do I term this? Because I love Dante. I think I sort of said on Monday when we last talked that I would be surprised if you see any traces of Dante Scarnecchia anywhere, like on the practice field. I'll just say this, and Dante, and I talked about, his, military background. He's always been team first. He's extremely humble. He wants no attention for himself. It drives him crazy. I talked about that on Monday. To me, this goes in line with this. Now, as far as describing exactly how involved Dante's going to be, I think it's an evolving thing. But I think, and I bet Bill O'Brien, as soon as I tweeted out what he said on his podcast, which it's a fabulous podcast, by the way. I mean, nobody tells stories like Bill O'Brien. He's awesome.
Yeah.
But he kind of flaps his gums, and sometimes he says too much. And I bet you he got a little flack for what he said. I think Dante's going to be involved. I think he's an advisor. I think he's already been there. I think he's just helping. He's just trying to be helpful in whatever way he can. Like, he's certain Dante is not somebody who's going to overstep. He's not going to want an office. I mean, maybe they give him an office, but I see him being more active sort of in the off season, teaching, whether it's Doug Marrone. Now we know after Vrabel announced the coaching staff, there's 2 assistant line coaches, which I love, Hoftaling and also Kugler, who is being retained. And like we said, when he was hired last year, I've heard nothing but good things about him, and including I've continued to hear good things about him from the new people that are in the building that are just working with him for the first time. There's going to be a transition, like we said, and I know some people are still asking like what kind of scheme it's that they're going to be running. I'm telling you, it's Josh McDaniels' scheme. It's Josh McDaniels' terminology. Are they going to do some different things? Yes, but the foundation of what the Patriots are going to be doing are what Josh McDaniels and Dante Scarnecchia have done for years. And I think, while, Doug Marrone, I think it's going to be an easy transition for him because he's really based in Sean Payton's scheme. And
Yeah.
those schemes are very similar. That scheme is very similar to what Josh McDaniels does in terms of, how they run play action, how they block things up. So, but there's going to be a transition. So I think Dante is there for whatever they need. He's going to be there. I think this is a case of him being humble because this is just who he is. He doesn't want to bring any attention to himself. He doesn't want himself talked about, but I know that he doesn't want to be called like an advisor or what have you. If you're giving him truth serum, he would just say, if they need help and they call, obviously I'm going to be there because I think the world of Josh McDaniels, number one, but also Mike Vrabel, and I'll do anything to help the Patriots be successful.
Yeah, he said, I have not been helping out behind the scenes. He said it's not true that he'll be consulting with the Patriots. My read on it is, if he says he's a consultant, if he admits that, it could be looked down upon, when talking about Doug Marrone, because, does Doug Marrone need a consultant?
Right.
And so, I don't think Scar wants to go out there and say, yeah, you know what? I'm helping. I'm holding Doug Marrone's hand, or I'm helping Doug figure this thing out. Like you said, that's not really Scar's thing. That's not what he does. So I'm not surprised that he said what he said. And I would also add this. I don't believe that Bill O'Brien just made this up. I don't think he goes on his podcast and he's like, you know what? Dante Scarnecchia is floating around. Like let's not forget that Bill O'Brien is very close with Doug Marrone.
They're best friends. Have been for like 30 years.
And he's got a great relationship with Mike Vrabel. So I don't think he just plucks this out of the ether and says, oh yeah, Scarnecchia is hanging around. He's been there a couple times. I agree with you, Greg. I think Bill said something and Dante probably did not want it out there. So he went on radio and he squashed it the best way he could. But I agree with you. I don't think O'Brien's making it up. And I do think Scar's the kind of guy who would absolutely help. He would absolutely help, the situation because of those relationships. All right. With all of that said, the staff is officially official. Let me first ask you, Greg, before we kind of break this down, what is your biggest takeaway about this coaching staff under Mike Vrabel?
Good question. Let me just call up the staff because I thought I had it in front of me. I don't. My biggest takeaway is experience, smart, proven, a good mix of experience and youth, but very bright. The ability to be coached by, the head coach and the coordinators. At the end of the day, there's been a lot of discussion about this. Certainly I've been a part of it over the past week, or past couple weeks. The bottom line for me is, especially with Scarnecchia being around, I think I said this on Monday, it's sort of like, Jules in Pulp Fiction. Oh, you sent in the wolf? That's all you had to say. Now that I know that Dante's going to be around to help things and help the transition and translate McDaniel speak into other things for the line coaches and the other positional coaches. I think this is a pretty impressive coaching staff. I mean, I know there's no alignment on the offensive side from the coordinator to the assistant coaches, but that's not always a bad thing. And that Vrabel and McDaniels worked in lockstep to formalize the staff, to me is a great thing. I mean, I think, between Marrone and Todd Downing and Tony Dews, you're talking about really good, professional coaches who have a lot of experience. And then you mix in Thomas Brown and Ashton Grant. You're talking about young, up and coming, really bright people. Like we said, I think we said this before. I mean, Thomas Brown went from college football to 1 year on Sean McVay's staff to being an assistant head coach.
Yeah.
If that doesn't tell you something about the guy, I don't know what to do. But I think at the end of the day, it's an impressive group. I think we could put an end to all the nonsense from the end of Belichick to Mayo's coaching staff last year. Like, this is a real professional football staff.
I think my biggest takeaway is that this is not Tennessee part 2. And for whatever reason that is, there are guys from Tennessee, but I saw a tweet last night. I think it was from Paul Kaharski, who tweeted out that, it's 10 out of the 27 coaches on this staff that are from Tennessee, from Vrabel's days in Tennessee. That's 37%. So well under 50%. So this is not, this is not what I think a lot of people thought. And I think one of the criticisms about Vrabel, especially coming from some people in Tennessee, said, oh, he's just going to get his old cronies. He's just going to bring his guys. It's going to be a full-on Mike Vrabel operation. And so this doesn't look that way. He did bring guys in, which you expect every coach to do from his old stomping grounds and guys that he has relationships with, but only 10 of the 27 are from Tennessee. So I think this is much what we talked about on Monday, Greg. It just feels like they are looking for the best and the brightest. And let's bring in some guys who we know are professionals, have experience, can run their own rooms. I mean, just the offensive line staff, I really believe I don't know if you could do better. I mean, the fact that you've got Marrone, who's been around the game forever coaching O-line, and I know there's been questions about Marrone, and those are fair about lack of development and all of that. But you've got the guy who's, the steady veteran, gruff, as you described him, experienced O-line coach. And then you've got Ho-tailing, who's the kind of the affable, I don't know if he's gregarious, but, a little bit of a soft landing spot with Ho-tailing. Both of those guys have been offensive line coaches. They've run rooms. And then you've got, as you mentioned, Greg, the very well thought of Robert Kugler staying on as an assistant. I mean, if you compare this offensive line coaching staff, and that's not even involving Scar with whatever role he's playing or not playing, man, compare this with the staffs that we've seen. It's Adrian Clem, Matt Patricia. This is just, it just makes me almost borderline laugh at the prior iterations of the O-line coaches of the past couple of years.
Yeah, and one thing I'd like to add to that, and I totally agree with you. I mean, everybody knows the way I feel about the offensive line and how important it is and how disappointed I've been in recent years on the way that the Patriots handled that line. What's interesting is like this, rarely do you see, I mean, look, I don't go through every team, but I can't remember the last time I saw 3 offensive line coaches. I'm sure it happens. And, there's usually some helpers with, certain techniques and things like that. But, and then you also throw Scarnecchia into the mix on, possibly helping away from the bright lights and everything. What's interesting to me, Nick, is that, with 3 guys, and I was talking to somebody at the Senior Bowl about this, and they were giving examples on like how the Patriots have fallen behind as far as some of their staffing. And there's a feeling and this is like not just on a coaching staff, but like as a whole in terms of player development and things like that. And, they remarked about how, they've fallen behind, and there's a sense in the building on people who have been there that Vrabel has the type of cachet with the crafts, and McDaniels does as well, that they can actually get some things done. Like, it was one thing for those people, whether it's Elliott Wolf and Alonzo Highsmith and Pat Stewart, to say, this is how other NFL teams do things. This is what we need to do. We don't have these departments, and we're not doing this. But, maybe the crafts don't really, they're like, well, are you sure you really know what you're talking about? You're new in this role, that type of thing. But with Vrabel there, they feel like they might actually be able to get things done. And I wonder if this is an example, talking to that person at the Senior Bowl, they were pointing out how the Eagles have a vast player development department. And, it's not just helping players transition to being pros. That's part of it. And the Patriots, I think, have fallen behind there. But in terms of developing players, like it was pointed out to me that Connor Barwin, the former NFL player, was brought back to the organization, and his only role on the team is to coach up the bottom of the roster, practice squad guys, the 53rd, 52nd guy.
Yeah.
It just to coach them up. Like, he spends time, he goes over, because the positional coaches don't have time to do that during the season. So you see a team like the Eagles and, lose people with injury, you have these guys ready to go. And I look at that offensive line staffing and I'm like, I wonder if one of these guys, whether it's Ho-tailing, which his nickname is Haas, from what I understand, or Kugler, or Kugler, are one of those guys going to be responsible for the development of the younger guys, maybe who aren't in the top 7 or 8 practice squad guys? And it also leads me to question, is this an indication that the Patriots might go really young on the offensive line, that they might go heavy offensive line in the draft instead of free agency? I mean, I don't think that's the case, but it definitely leads you to think, like, it seems like they're putting a priority on development of the offensive line, which they should. And everybody knows I'm in favor of that. But it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
Well, we can't forget about Mike Vrabel's introductory press conference. One of the first things he talked about was the offensive line and making sure that they've got that figured out, which all of us have been just waiting years for that to happen. All right, before we continue, Greg, tell the people about PrizePicks.
PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. I'll be sitting down with the big game this weekend with my picks. I made my picks. I'll give them to you in a second. But it's playoff time. It's now or never. Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with PrizePicks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. PrizePicks now offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't? Make your picks in 60 seconds or less and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. So with the Super Bowl, they're offering a special. I've talked about it before. These free squares. So as long as Patrick Mahomes has more than a half a passing yard, check. So you're already on your way to winning money. So for my picks, I have Patrick Mahomes, obviously, more than a half passing yard. I have Saquon Barkley, more than a half rushing and receiving touchdown. I have Juju Smith-Schuster. Yes. Juju Sanu.
Oh, God.
For more than 17 and a half receiving yards. I think that the Chiefs are going to have to pass in this game. I think Juju will get, what it was at the Bills game when he exploded for a couple catches. AJ Brown, less than 70 and a half receiving yards. I don't think he's going to have a big day. I assume it's going to be Trent McDuffie and Spags with his pressure. We'll see. Chris Jones, more than a quarter sack. He's definitely getting that. So you should bank on that. And Noah Gray, Chiefs tight end. I think he's going to have a sneaky big game in this. I have him for more than 2 receiving targets. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game.
Noah Gray and Juju Smith-Schuster. Look at Bedard with these deep pulls. All right, couple more things about the coaching staff before we move forward. Deron Mayo stays. I texted you this yesterday. I said Gerard's brother is still on the staff. I was surprised. Were you?
Yeah, I'm extremely surprised. It's not something I would have done. I think they need a clean break from all things Mayo. I mean, you're just inviting. I mean, it's a little bit disappointing to me because this is more of the bullcrap that's gone on the past couple of years. I mean, whether it's Gerard Mayo's succession contract or keeping Brian Belichick on staff. Look, I have respect for all those guys, and I'm sure they, certainly in the case of Brian, I'm sure he was a professional and everything. We know that Gerard had his share of issues his final season as an assistant coach with that succession contract. And like, I don't know, there just seems to be some drama. It feels like there's some drama underneath between Gerard and the Patriots. And now you have Deron in there. And, those strength coaches are among the closest to the players. And I don't know. I just would have done a clean break. I mean, at least Frank Perino is there as sort of the director.
Yeah.
And if things don't go well, he could deal with it and nip it in the bud. But I mean, I guess it would sort of throw cold water on, all the various internet rumors that are out there about Mayo and the Crafts and his contract and things like that. But it also leads you to think, okay, was this part of some sort of deal that, that maybe Gerard is like, I'll go quietly into the dark, but, you got to keep my brother or something like that. I mean, it's just that when you retain a presence like that, these are the type of questions that get asked.
A little quid pro quo action. The other thing that stood out to me, I'm not a fan of this, is that there's no assistant wide receivers coach. A lot of teams have assistant wide receivers coaches. Last year, the Patriots had Tyquan Underwood. He is now in Dallas as the assistant wide receivers coach. This is all on Todd Downing. I was hoping we would see a former receiver, Greg, that could work underneath Downing with the guys on a day-to-day basis about some of the minutia of being a receiver, but no assistant wide receivers coach. That's disappointing to me.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I think that McDaniels will be involved a lot. That's something he's done in the past. But who knows? We might see another addition at some point. I guess it could be, but I know that from talking to people who know him, like Todd Downing's a damn good coach. And yes, he doesn't have a background in tight ends. In receivers, it's more tight ends and quarterbacks and things like that. But when you've been an offensive coordinator and a QB coach and a tight ends coach,
yeah,
you know what you're doing. You know the entirety of the offense, and I'm just glad that room, from where we were a year ago, with the guy, I could picture him.
Tyler Hughes.
Yeah, Tyler Hughes, who hadn't coached that position since JUCO. I mean, you're talking about a very experienced NFL coach, and with McDaniels there to help if needed, I think they'll be okay at the end of the day, and it'll be an improvement over last year, certainly.
All right, before we get to some of the trade talk that's out there, I want Greg to tell you about Gametime because they're so good at what they do.
You got to get to a game to experience it. Yeah, we all watch the games on TV, and it's great and it's cost effective and stuff like that. But at your heart, you're a sports fan, and to really get the full experience, you have to go. And a great place to do that is through Gametime. I go there. Gametime Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I love the all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. They have seat views where you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, which is a must for me. I told you guys last podcast that the Beanpot Championship, which includes both games, the consolation and the final, because I'm looking to go. At the time, you could get in for $60. That is not the case anymore, but they still have great deals over there. You should go check it out. BU versus BC. BC's kind of a wagon, but the rivalry. You got to be there. There's nothing like the Beanpot. I think I'm definitely going to be there. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
Myles Garrett wants out. He went public. If you were the Patriots, and look, we all understand that Myles Garrett wants to play for a contender, and if he had it his way, New England would not be on the radar. But from the Patriots' point of view, Greg, would you be placing a phone call to Cleveland? Would you be pursuing Myles Garrett?
Well, I certainly would call on anybody. And you need to do your due diligence to see what the market is. I mean, I guess I would think about it. A lot of it would be the ask, and you're talking 2 first-round picks. I would definitely not send number 4 for Myles Garrett. I mean, you have the opportunity, and look, Garrett is awesome, and he's one of these players that, like, there's just not many of them who walk the planet. But that being said, the Patriots right now aren't in a position to go get a Myles Garrett. I mean, hopefully they'll be there a year from now, 2 years from now, when you're sort of looking for the icing on top. I think this team needs to be more about investing in younger players. I mean, whether it's Abdul Carter or Mason Graham, you're talking about a guy that you can draft, have control over, build them up in your scheme, teach them up. Myles is great, but to me, that's not the type of guy, not right now, that I think they should be going after.
I'd be in on it. And I talked about this on my podcast yesterday. If you want to check it out, Nick Cattles Show on YouTube. I would deal the 4th pick for Myles Garrett, and it's a very difficult decision to make. And I totally understand what you just mentioned, Greg, and I think it's a debatable topic. And I understand the thought process of no, I would not give up number 4, but I think Myles Garrett, he's 29 years old. I think he still has at least 3 to 4 years left of, top tier play. He's a generational guy. We throw that term around a lot, but he is legitimately generational. I think if he was playing for another team, a lot of people would understand how awesome Myles Garrett is. And it's an edge. It's somebody that you absolutely need. It's a position of need. And, I think if you bring him in, I get the Abdul Carter part, but Abdul Carter prays to be Myles Garrett one day. And yeah. I don't know if he'll ever even touch that level of play. We don't know. So if I could get a guaranteed stud, again, Myles Garrett's one of the top 3 or 4 defensive players in all of football. And so if I can get that guy for, let's say, the 4th pick and, maybe like a pick swap in the mid rounds of this year's draft, I would do it. I would not go 2 1s. I would not go with, a 1 and a 2 this year. I wouldn't extend that far. I'd say you're getting the 4th pick. If you're Cleveland, you now have 2 of the top 4 picks in the draft. That should be good enough for you. So I would draw the line. But I just think that Garrett, he's a game changer. He could change your entire defense. And if you went into next year with Garrett on the edge, Barmore, fingers crossed, back in the middle, and Gonzalez as cornerback 1, you've got 3 legitimate, blue chip kind of talents defensively. And yeah, year 1, it might not be great. In 2025, you might win 7 games, but he's going to be 30 in year 2 in 2026. So a 30-year-old Myles Garrett with a team that, after 2 off seasons should be talking playoffs, it's a tough decision, but I would do it. How about Cooper Kupp? Because the Rams are going to trade Cooper Kupp, or at least they want to trade Cooper Kupp. What would be your limit for Cooper?
Oh, that's a good question. It depends on how much, if any, money the Rams eat, which they've done in the past. That will change the compensation. Maybe a future 3, maybe. But I will say, I've changed my mind on Cooper Kupp. At first, I'm not interested in the Patriots getting older, bringing down, broken down players. They need to do this thing the right way. And I want them to do it like the Commanders have done it, which is basically a bunch of mid-level free agents that the coaching staff and front office have some background with, and nail the draft. That's what I want the Patriots to do. That being said, and Cooper Kupp, he's a bit expensive. You can say anything you want about the guaranteed money, or he's got a roster bonus in March. But the bottom line is, right now, he's set to make 17, $18 million next year, which is really rich. They're going to have to, if they do it, they're going to have to redo the contract. But so I was sort of against it. I don't want an older guy. I don't want an older, expensive guy. I'd rather go a different route. And especially, with, T. Higgins or whoever available in free agency, I'd rather go that route. However, I've changed my mind because I heard Andrew Whitworth on with Zolak and Bertrand today from Radio Row, and how Andrew Whitworth talked about Cooper Kupp, about how smart he is, about how he's going to be a coach, about how he thinks of the game in a different way and would basically like suggest things in terms of like how to change blocking assignments and certainly routes, and how he basically he runs the receivers room. He's the one that taught Puka Nacua like everything that he knows about that offense and how he's become so good so quickly. Like when I heard all that stuff, I was like, how do the Patriots not bring in a guy like that with what's going on in that room right now, or what has gone on, and also the value that he could bring to Drake May, and also I think the value that he would bring to Josh McDaniels. Like he'd be a guy that he could talk about with X's and O's and adjustments during the game. Like I just think the value, even if he got hurt, even he'd still be around. I just think the value that he would bring to the room to Drake May, I think it makes it worth everything for a couple years.
In on Kupp. I would be in on Cooper Kupp. I wouldn't give up more than a 4th-round pick for him. I think that's fair value because of the contract, because he's going to be 32 in June, because he's missed a lot of games. I mean, if you acquire him, he's going to play probably 10 to 12 games, and that's it. But he's your best receiver when he walks into that wide receiver room day one. He's better than anybody they have right now on this roster. I don't think it's necessarily close, even at, the advanced age, quote unquote. I think he helps the room, vet leadership. I think he could still be productive. Is he going to be a guy who catches 6-7 balls a week? No. But I'll tell you, Greg, what I would do is the first thing I would do, as soon as I saw this story pop up, as soon as I saw Cooper's social media post, if I'm Mike Vrabel, if I'm Josh McDaniels, hey, Thomas, come here for a minute. I'd call Thomas Brown in, and I'd say, tell me everything you know about Cooper Kupp, because Thomas Brown was there when Cooper Kupp was at his best. And, Brown didn't work with receivers. He was tight ends coach, running backs coach, assistant head coach, but he certainly has info and intel on Cooper Kupp. So I would bring Brown in and say, what are we getting with this guy? And I think because Brown is your passing game coordinator and he has the history with Cooper Kupp, I think that's another reason why you would bring him in, because I would imagine that Brown has ideas how to best utilize him even at 32 years old. So I would pull the trigger. I think you could rework the deal. You have all the leverage. I think you could get, a 2-year deal out of Cooper, not pay him a ton of money. I saw Spotrac's valuation has it like 2 years, $22 million. I think you could talk to Cooper and say, look, we're going to extend you. We'll give you a 2-year extension. We'll give you 2 years and $24 million. We'll give you some of that up front with a roster bonus or whatever we got to do, a signing bonus. And I think he's the perfect. You're not bringing him in. You're not going to bring him in. This isn't a Myles Garrett situation, okay? You would not be bringing Cooper Kupp in to be the number 1 receiver. But if he's your third guy, if he's like a 2B/3, depending on what else you do, I'm in on it. All right, before we get to the Super Bowl.
Nick,
Greg,
one more thing.
Sure.
Sort of while we're talking about players and possible available players, because I was looking at this earlier, and I know you're a big fan of this potential move. So I was looking at like what Eric DaCosta said about Ronnie Stanley, and maybe you've already been over this on your own podcast because you're a nut like that and probably, reading all this crap. But, I was looking at, because they have a couple guys. They have Stanley, they have Makari, the more interior guy. He's, he's versatile. He can play a bunch of different spots. But, Eric DaCosta was asked about those two guys in his end of season press conference. And, looking at his comments, like, first of all, he didn't call either of them by their names. He didn't say anything close to, Ronnie's not going anywhere. He's a building block. Like, he actually more talked up about how they have good young offensive linemen, that offensive linemen get better as they get stronger. And I don't know, because apparently one of the options is they take Rosengarten from right tackle, where he played well this year, and this is one of the guys we talked about in the past that the Patriots should have been interested in drafting, and playing him on the left side. And plus, we all know about how the Ravens are obsessed with comp picks and all that stuff. And so, reading the tea leaves, I think Ronnie Stanley might get to market, which would blow me away. Look, he's had some durability problems. You're going to have to go over all that stuff. I don't think they have anybody on staff that has come from the Ravens. I don't think, which that sort of limits it. But I just found it interesting that, reading the comments, I would not be surprised if Ronnie Stanley's on the market, which, would probably make him one of the top priorities from the Patriots. You have to think.
Yeah. And DaCosta, look, he did a great interview, Greg. If you get the time, it's 30 minutes. I've got to pump the tires a little bit of Todd McShay show. He has 2 interviews coming up. So he's got one with Nick Caserio coming up soon, but he did one with Eric DaCosta at the Senior Bowl. And it's just the role of a GM and what they do. And just, it's a fantastic interview with DaCosta. It's about 30 minutes long. It just came out a few days ago. I watched it yesterday. It's fantastic stuff. And, I was watching the pod and I was just thinking about like what DaCosta was saying and relating it to the Patriots. And it's just fascinating. One of the things he mentions, he's like, look, we have not been able to find an X receiver, that big bodied guy on the outside. And he talked about, those guys don't grow on trees. A lot of teams are having trouble with that. So when we look at the Patriots not getting an X, it's not unique, around the league. It's a difficult guy to find. He also talked about offensive line play. He talked about analytics, and he mentioned that they talked to a lot of people from the Orioles organization and how they've beefed up their analytics the past few years. And I found that interesting because, of course, we found out that the Patriots hired one of the top analysts at the Red Sox back in December and brought him into the fold. And that made me think that what you had talked about a couple of months ago about the Crafts calling around the league and figuring out how they can kind of beef up things around Drake May and make the operation better. Of course, DaCosta's a local guy. I wonder if DaCosta was one of those phone calls. And, you also look at, what Cleveland has done. They brought Paul DePotesta from the Guardians over to their operation. So I would suggest watching that 30-minute interview with DaCosta.
I definitely will.
I thought it was fantastic stuff. And I think if you watch it, if you're a Patriots fan and you watch it through the lens of the Patriots, one of the things that stood with me before we get to the Super Bowl, and I was thinking about what you and I discussed regarding Elliott Wolf and how he was pretty much holding Gerard Mayo's hand last year. And people would say, Nick, why are you so hard on Gerard Mayo and not as hard on Elliott Wolf? I think Elliott Wolf failed. I've said that multiple times. Mm-hmm. But here's the difference. Gerard Mayo has the chance every single week to improve. Wolf doesn't. When the season starts, the season starts, baby. Your roster is your roster. You can try to make trades. You can go to practice squads. But there's very little that you can do. So if Elliott Wolf is sitting there going, damn it, I got it wrong on this guy, he can't do much about it.
Especially at left tackle.
And DaCosta said, which drives me crazy still to this day, people continue to act as if the offensive line we saw out there was the offensive line that was the plan from day one, when we know it wasn't. And I'm not telling you that the plan from day one would work, but it's disingenuous to be like, that's the offensive line they threw out there. Well, not really. After like 3 or 4 injuries and a guy quit. Yeah, then that happened. But anyway, DaCosta said one thing during that podcast, and he was talking about being a GM and how Mondays, you could talk to anybody that knows him, and people will tell you across the board he's an a-hole on Mondays. And it's because, as he put it, once the season starts, he's a hostage to like the roster. He knows there's nothing that he can do, relatively speaking. So watching it during the season drives him crazy. And I thought about the front office last year and all the stuff that they couldn't do. And I'm sure they must have been looking at this team going, my God, what the bleep? But they, like DaCosta said, you can't do much about it during the season. So I would suggest that podcast. It's fantastic stuff with McShay and DaCosta. All right. You know what else is fantastic, Greg? Notturno.
As someone who spent years covering football, I know what it takes to be a winning team. It's about reliability, precision, and showing up when it matters most. When it came to my own home and my heating system, I needed a team I could count on, and Notturno Home Services delivered. Notturno is local. They are family owned and family focused and have been servicing the greater Boston area for 15 years. From start to finish, they made the process of upgrading my heating system seamless and stress free, and they go above and beyond. Told you the story. My valve failed 4 days before they were supposed to put in my new unit. 53 degrees upstairs where the kids were sleeping. And Notturno diagnosed it, said, sure, we'll take a look. Diagnosed, found out I needed a new valve. Guess what? They put one in for free just to get me to installation day. That's the type of service they provide. Notturno isn't just about heating. They're my go-to for plumbing, cooling, and even water and air quality solutions. They've got the expertise to handle whatever your home needs. Here's the best part. You can get 10% off your next service with Notturno. That could save you up to $1,000 on your next project. Just visit notturnohome.com/Bedard. That's Notturno home.com/Bedard for all details and conditions. Take advantage now. These deals won't last forever. If you're looking for a team that puts your comfort first, make sure you visit notturnohome.com/Bedard. I trust Notturno, and you will too.
All right. Notturno does great work. I was a little bit distracted there because the Cleveland Cavaliers just traded for DeAndre Hunter, which is a good pickup for them. So if you're a Celtics fan, the Cavs just got better and tougher. All right, so let's get to the Super Bowl, Greg. Philadelphia.
You even tweeted.
Offense.
Look at you, multitasking.
Yeah, I was tweeting. Well, you're doing the reads, and I know that they don't even show my face during these reads. So I'm like, I could steal a little bit of a tweet here for 5 seconds. All right, so Philadelphia. Let's start here. Philadelphia offense versus the Kansas City defense. What interests you about that matchup?
So, I think it would be. I'm interested. Look. I'm interested to see how Jalen Hurts plays. I mean, I thought he played fantastic in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. I thought he played great against the Commanders last time out. I am not a Jalen Hurts guy. There's been way too many games where I think he stunk and he hangs on to the ball. But for some reason, I don't know why, but in these big games, he showed well. To me, it's going to be interesting. Can Hurts run the ball? Is he healthy? Do they have the six-back offense going? With Hurts and Saquon Barkley, how do the Chiefs defend that? I think Leo Chanel has a chance to be, sort of a X factor. When does Spags bring pressure? How do they cover? How can they get Jalen Hurts to, instead of he just throws outside the numbers, can they get him in the middle of the field? Obviously, Spags loves to man up. I wonder if they throw a curveball in this game and they play a little bit more zone. And because Hurts is not good at throwing with anticipation, throwing into windows, man makes it a little bit easier. So I wonder if Spags goes against what he normally does with 2 weeks to prepare and goes more zone. But look, they're going to have to stop. They're going to have to stop the running game, and they're going to have to make Hurts beat them.
Interesting that you bring up the zone and blitzing and how Spags will approach this game. Kansas City, when they zone blitz, they are incredibly effective. When they zone blitz, they're number one in the NFL, Greg, in pressure rate. 51% of the time when they blitz with the zone look, they get pressure on the quarterback. The second best team in the NFL in yards per attempt allowed when they blitz zone. And Jalen Hurts versus zone blitzes, this goes into exactly what Greg just mentioned. Jalen Hurts has the worst sack rate in the entire NFL against zone blitzing. He's taken 10 sacks. So that really backs up what you just said, Greg. The other part of it, of course, is the Philadelphia run game. They're number one in the league in time of possession. They're number one in the league in run rate. They want to run the football. Super conservative offensively when you look at the pass game, especially since their bye week back in week 5. So will they be able to run the ball? They've got the fourth best run offense in DVOA. Kansas City, though, here's a little nugget from Dan Orlovsky this week. The Chiefs have not allowed a 100-yard rusher over their past 18 playoff games. That goes back to 2019. So 18 straight games, they have not given up a 100-yard rusher. So,
and let me add to that because I just saw this. Spags has allowed a 100-yard rusher exactly once in his playoff career, 24 games. That would be Marion Barber, 129 yards in the 2007 divisional game.
Wow, Marion Barber. He was a fantasy stud for a couple of years.
Yeah.
All right, before we get to the now let's get to it now. Philadelphia's defense versus Kansas City's offense.
So I'm fascinated about what the Chiefs do on their offensive line. How do they match up with, Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, who, he only played 13 snaps in the last game, but he was damn good and damn effective in those 13 snaps. They have a good, little sub rusher that comes in as well. Are they going to put Tooney at left tackle again? Or do they go a different route? Do they slide Tooney inside and go with who's the guy that they brought in who hasn't been healthy yet?
DJ Humphries.
Yes, DJ Humphries. Is he finally ready? Can he play? Do you do that in the Super Bowl? What's interesting to me is, I have a great deal of respect for both Fangio and Spags. Fangio's sort of his claim to fame and sort of what he relies on. It's not all that different than Bill Belichick. They just do it in different ways. It's no big plays.
Yep.
Make the other offense drive 12, 15 plays to score a touchdown, play really good red zone defense. The thing is that going to work against the Chiefs? They don't get any explosive plays. All they do is go 12, 15 plays to go down the field. I mean, that's what they do. So, it's a fascinating matchup. I mean, I just think that, between Mahomes is the better quarterback, Andy Reid is the better offensive play caller. I like Spags a little bit more than Fangio. But there's going to be a whole push and pull. Fangio loves to play nickel. The Chiefs have the ability to go multiple tight ends. Part of the reason why I picked Noah Gray in PrizePicks. Can they block the interior well enough and run the ball well enough? That's a big key for me. The Chiefs have to be able to run the ball. They can't go one-dimensional in this game. I mean, they can and still win. It wouldn't be my preferred route. But can they get the Eagles out of their preferred nickel, get Cooper DeJean off the field, get them to go more base to defend the run? Doubtful, but, Mahomes is Mahomes.
It's like you and I discussed this before we recorded the pod, which we didn't.
We did not.
You mentioned Kansas City and the fact that they have this long drive mentality of, we don't need huge explosive plays. We'll just kind of dink and dunk you to death. And that's what Vic Fangio forces you to do. And Brady did a great job of discussing that during the NFC Championship game. He mentioned it a number of times. Like Fangio's, he makes you earn every yard. Kansas City this year, number 1 in the NFL in drives of 10 or more plays. They had 45 drives of 10 plays or more. That's, again, number 1 in the NFL. So Fangio forces you to be methodical. Kansas City has majored in being methodical this year offensively. I would also tell you this. Vic Fangio against Patrick Mahomes in his career, 0 wins, 8 losses. He lost 6 times with Denver. He lost twice with Miami. He has yet to beat Patrick Mahomes. So you want to keep that kind of in the back of your mind. All right. Don't forget to check out Greg. We'll have our prediction in a minute. Don't forget to check out Greg and Giardi, $50 a year at BSJ. Also, check out our friends at PrizePicks. Download that app. Code CLNS, $50 instantly when you play $5. And we've got more friends as well at Gametime. If you're wanting to take the guesswork out of buying tickets, check those guys out and gals out. CLNS, again, is the code, $20 off your first purchase. Chiefs, -1.5, over under 48.5. What are you doing?
I can't pick against the Chiefs. I mean, I think it's going to be a really, really good game. The Eagles definitely have a chance to win this game. And if they win, and, rather comfortably, I wouldn't be all that surprised. I mean, just because, I think that if the Chiefs end up losing, it's because they can't run the ball and they can't defend the run. that would surprise me, but it's certainly there. I mean, the Eagles seem to, between Landon Dickerson and Juergens, it seems they've gotten a little bit healthier on the offensive line. They've had the 2 weeks off. I think Hurts is probably a little bit more healthy. But the Chiefs in this spot, I just can't pick against them. I think they have the better quarterback. They had the better offensive play caller, and they have the better defensive coordinator, and they also have the better special teams guy in Dave Tube. So I just can't pick against that. I'm going Chiefs 27-24. Did we pick it? Did I get the exacta?
Almost. I hate to do it. I want Philly to win, but I'm picking Kansas City.
The little reverse jinx there, Nick?
I'm gonna maybe the magic works. I'm going KC minus the 1.5. My final score that I have down is actually 27-23. So we're off 1 point. I got 27-23. So both of us say go with the Chiefs and go with the over. All right, we'll be back early next week. Talk more Patriots. Until then, everybody be well.